We'll convene the meeting and we'll be calling it to order, almost on time. And would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Everyone is reminded, as I just was, to turn on their mics when they're ready to speak. And we will get started. And I think there's two different agendas, but in a cooperative way. Are we ready to start with bus transportation? And some background on that is that I know this became it was an issue that was brought before Mr. Mann's committee and interest. Hello. And also it's been a difficult fall for us regarding bus driver shortages, but we've been very impressed with how our vendor, and as well as Metro, as well as our own in-house administrative team, has been able to overcome much of this and deal with it. So we're going to get started with the yellow bus transportation, and we're almost ready. And I think Jen, I think they want you to be over here. I think seated. I believe so. Is that the right one?
Thank you.
All right. Okay, ready for Wagner.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Wagner, the Chief Information Officer for the Cincinnati School District. I'm here to tell you a little bit about our yellow bus transportation, some of the challenges that we've had this year, and then what we've done to help solve those problems. So just to give a little bit of background, we transport, we have 17,942 eligible students that are city residents. They don't necessarily attend our public schools, but we've been able to route 16,000 of those students that are eligible according to board policy. The rest we do payment in lieu of, which the state calculates the rate, and it just means that there's not enough students on a route to justify the economics of sending a bus out there. And then our current ridership is down a little bit from previous years. We think it's because of the shortage of bus drivers, and we have some solutions in place. Just to give you a further breakdown of our ridership, out of the 16,000 that are routed, 9,100 are Cincinnati Public School students, 2,500 are non-public students, and 4,600 are charter school students. So in the contract for this year, we started a new centralized call center. It just started this fall, and it's located on Hamilton Boulevard at the First Student site. Their hours of operation are from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and they staff it a little bit heavier during the peak hours, so the morning routes and then the evening routes. We're actually making some modifications based on the data that we're collecting, how to beef up some different time, the peak tier, and then with weather concerns and late buses in the evenings, we may be beefing up the later hours a little bit. But it's staffed with a manager, 2 full-time 8-hour shifts, and then they supplement with part-time employees, and 2 of which are Spanish bilingual, as we have a growing bilingual population. So here are some of the call center statistics for the last month. You can see just graphically how the number of calls that come in are declining because we've been able to cover some of the driver shortages. They're getting a little bit better at answering the calls, and then what we want to do is minimize the calls that aren't answered or the calls that are lost. And so we've been focusing on looking at those statistics and working on those. Oops. So, did I go too fast? No. So some of the driver challenges that we've been having this year, and I've given you a little bit of history from school year 12, the 11-12 school year all the way up to the current year, which is school year 15, and then the changes that we've been experiencing. Our district, we're double tiered, which means a driver picks up students, drops them off at school, then goes back and does a second tier to pick up students for a second school and then drop them off. Not all of our schools are able to tier in a double way, and so that's the single routes. And from last year to this year, we had a significant increase in the number of single routes, specifically because of the state change from number of days of instruction to the number of hours. Some of our schools elected, some of the non-public schools elected to shorten their number of days and increase the number of hours. So they changed their start times, which broke linkages for us. That contributes to driver shortage because the number of hours that are required to do a single route is a lot less, so people are earning less and they want more double routes and full-time jobs. So below, the table below shows you the analysis of single routes, so you can see that the public school system does not have any single routes. We've been able to double route all of our schools. The non-public had an increase of 7. They have 21 single routes, and the charters have 43, so they're not as easily to work into our schedule. These are the same information for our special needs buses, the shorter buses. And so this year we had a significant change. Oh, wait a minute, let me back up a second, I forgot. The last column on the end is the end of October and how the changes that we've been making, and I'll go over some of those changes, how we've been able to decrease some of the challenge that we've had. For example, we started in August with 64 single routes. We're down to 60 at the end of October. So we've been able to eliminate some of those through rerouting and increasing the number of payment in lieu of. On the special needs, we had a significant increase again in the single routes, and we're back down to 20. We went from 37 back down to 25. We've discovered that the load ridership on the small buses, we can save money and save the need for a CDL license, converting a student from a small bus to a van, and so we've been able to eliminate some routes that way. Students are getting better service. So why are they driver challenges?
And Jennifer, maybe I should
Yes, ma'am.
interject there, especially since Mrs. Bates is not here, and this has sort of been one of the things she's been championing. The city and the district and Urban League and other employment avenues probably that we could be using. We've discovered, and you're emphasizing it, the driver shortage that we're experiencing. And indeed, there's such an opportunity for employment. And we need to be partnering with the city. I know it's been mentioned regarding the SORTA board, and also talking in terms of other employment opportunities. And we can't do it alone, and we've reached out. So you're going to talk a little bit about some of the things we've done. Mm-hmm. But that was the issue, bringing it to this group, is the employment piece, because it's something that needs to be done. So. Right.
So some of the statistics that we've seen are that, so why did the routes go increase? So, well, I talked about how some of the schools changed their start times. So 24 schools represented 22 routes going from a double route to a single route, breaking those linkages for us. We've contacted them, we've asked them to change. They haven't been as cooperative, and we have a plan to try to communicate with them a little bit sooner next year to try to convert some of those outliers back into the double route system. Our A to E, A to S program last year was on a metro service. We were had a lot of issues with downtown discipline, so we converted them to yellow bus, and now they're being picked up in the community centers. So that's improved the disciplinary and the bus service, but it helped create the driver challenge. Another issue that we had this summer was the non-publics and the charter schools actually closed for the summer. So when we're trying to build our routes, and we need to know what the school's schedules or their calendars are. We're trying to do that at the end of July, and they don't come back until beginning of August, so it makes it a very difficult challenge to anticipate any massive route changes or any growth in that area. And then the shortage of drivers. So why is there a shortage of drivers? Well, for every 100 trainees that they put through the CDL training, only 10 of them survive. And once they're trained, and they start working for a student, they tend to get recruited away to full-time jobs. Full-time meaning year-round versus school year. So drivers don't like to have to find a summer job and then come back and do a yellow bus route. So we looked at the data, and
Madam
it's
Chair.
about 60%.
Yes.
So I have a question. So why is it that only 10% make it through the training? That was my first question. And then second, what is the pay? What's the average pay for a bus driver?
Okay. So I'll get to the pay question on the next slide. Let me introduce you to Joe Eversole. He's from First Student. He's our location manager for the next couple weeks. He just got promoted and is going to Illinois. But, so Joe, do you want to talk about the 10%? Sure.
The 10%, can you hear me okay? The 10%, what we find is that a lot of the employees who sign up for the training program, some of them, the majority of them have no experience. So a lot of them will enter the training program really blindly as far as what it requires to get a CDL. We see a high number of people that will apply and then they will not pass the background checks or even the drug test that's required by Department of Transportation. In the state of Ohio, the requirements are pretty strict to drive a school bus, which is good for the safety of the children. But the biggest majority of that failure rate is due to the background checks and the requirements.
So this isn't just people who actually start the training and then only 10% of them, it's of the 100 people that apply, only 10% gets through, which makes a little bit more sense to me.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, my question would be, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and information. My question would be, with the 100 trainees and the 10 that do obtain CDLs, what percentage of that 10 do we actually retain that don't leave to our competitors and who do prefer to stay intact?
In the last 12 months, we're at about a 45% turnover rate.
Okay.
Yeah, which is pretty high, and as Jen has some more detail, but we're seeing a lot of that is being driven by full-time employment. There's a national driver shortage. If you do any kind of Google search, you'll see that's well publicized, and it's very competitive, and we have some breakdown, but some of it's being not necessarily other yellow school bus competition, but it's companies such as Rumpke, who offer 50, 60 hours a week versus a 25-hour work week. And again, it's year-round versus 180 days a year. So it's really hard to fault the employee for bettering themselves.
But for a typical trainee, what is the length of time for a CDL training, passing the test, certification? What's the timeline for that?
It takes approximately about 3 weeks. A lot of it depends on their schedule. We work with them. We actually have onboard instructors who do routes for us in the AM and the PM. And then midday, they'll come in with their trainees. They go through a series of classroom trainings. Some of it's done by the state, it's required by the state, and then some of it's internal for student training. And then we have to do the behind-the-wheel training. So depending on their experience and how well they're retaining the material, I would say on average about 3 weeks to go through the full process.
One last question. It seems as though if the deterrent pretty much is the fact that they can't pass the background check, and are you making allowances for expunging certain misdemeanors? Do you allow for certain prospects to maybe get clean in their drug tests and come back to reapply?
There is a policy for reapplying, but there is the state has a mandate for what the minimums are, and we can't really deviate from those.
Okay.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Yeah, I think I just wanted to, they gave a presentation to us about this at a recent board meeting as well, so I also wanted to speak to the fact that we also know if we're going to retain our bus drivers, we have to recruit people who want to drive a bus, not who want to drive potentially a metro or another kind of bus, a streetcar, or some other kind of bus. And so it does start at the recruitment stage, and so they're doing some interesting stuff about targeted recruitment around retirees or students, not obviously high school students, but older students, college, masters, et cetera, who are looking for part-time work. And so I thought that would be interesting for them so that you all would know that they are actually thinking about how to solve this problem from the recruitment stage, not just retention once we have them.
Yeah, and we've done a lot of research and even talked to our own employees about what works with this job in your personal life and what doesn't work. And we're using websites such as retirementjobs.com, and we're doing some more specialized recruitment to try to find those individuals that are looking for part-time work. And we've even got a lot of our parents involved, and the schools have been very helpful in posting flyers trying to find those specific people that are looking for part-time. Because again, the good majority of our employees it does work for, and we've had employees that's been with us for, 15, 16 years, and it works great with their schedule. So we're trying to find more of those types of individuals. We're working with a third-party recruiter by the name of Aquarius, and we're using them to specifically go after certain candidates as well.
Madam Chair, so one number I didn't see anywhere, forgive me if I missed it, is how many what's the number for needed drivers? How many openings are there? How many drivers do you need?
Right now, we have all the routes covered, but we have about 25 what we call standby positions or sub positions to cover call-offs, FMLA coverage, things of that nature.
But what's the total number of drivers that you need for everything to be running smoothly and on time?
Right, we have 230, or 228 large buses and 119 small buses right now.
Okay, so the question is, how many drivers do you all need?
For those buses?
One for each of those buses.
Yes.
What's we're talking about a shortage, right?
Yeah.
Right.
What's the shortage?
Yeah, the 25 drivers is you're talking open positions of the 385 total, but 25 openings, which are sub-drivers.
So you all need, okay, and then how many hours per week is a sub driver?
On average, about 25 hours, 25 to 30 roughly.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I've got this right. There are 25 job openings today for someone to work 25 hours a week, 9 months a year. Okay.
Yeah, and we do offer
Let's get
some.
to the bottom line, thanks.
Yeah.
Seems like that's kind of the thrust of the whole presentation, but I don't see it anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the one last comment was that the Department of Transportation actually created a new medical requirement as of last January that makes it a little bit harder to be a bus driver. That if you report of having sleep apnea, you report that you snore or have a 17-inch neck, you have to take a medical test waiver that costs out of pocket $3,000.
So you're a
Or
former
if you report to have
football player.
diabetes, the waiver test is $200 out of pocket. So that makes it.
What does a 17-inch neck have anything to do with sleep? I would imagine a lot of regular people might have a 17-inch neck.
That's good, but those are the requirements for the.
Yeah.
Okay.
According to the statistics, you're more at risk if you have a neck size that's larger, something with the passage.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
One more example of the state really helping us all out by creating interesting demands.
So some of these were already talked about, but what the First Student has done to help recruit drivers is they increased their hourly rate to $13.50 an hour. They offer employee referral bonuses and attendance bonuses. They pay them when they're training. They pay them $8 an hour using the third-party recruiting. And they've actually tripled their advertisement. And you actually did a TV ad last week or this week?
Yeah, we actually filmed the ad where Channel 12, the producer, we met with them, and they're actually finalizing that video, and it will run. It's going to run at various times of the day, some of which will be during the Family Feud, some of which will be during the evening news. So we're trying some different spots again to go after the certain target markets of retirees, hopefully.
So when we did this presentation for the board last week, I believe it was, we actually were averaging 1 to 2 uncovered routes, which meant a driver would have to go back and do a third route, and was causing students to show up at school late. And then I was showing them, these are the people that are coming through the system, so we're able to help solve that. As of yesterday, 11 of the 13 have been hired, but then we lost 6 more drivers and 2 other competitors, Metro being one of them. 3 are getting ready to test this week and 4 next week, and then 1 has been offered, and I don't know if they've been accepted. But so it's just a constant rollover and a constant struggle of hiring drivers, keeping them. Some of the things the district has done this year to help improve this is we've increased, I mentioned before, we started converting on small buses. If there's less than 6 students, it's more economical to put them on a van. It saves the need for a CDL licensed driver. And it's more economical to run a van than it is a small bus. So we're able to remove 6 routes doing that. We increased the minimum ridership on a large 72-seater bus from 10 to 20. So if it's under 20 riders on the bus, we convert them to payment in lieu of. We save the need for that driver. And then we actually started consolidating routes for the non-double tiered schools. to say, if you're gonna force us into single routes, and we're gonna try to maximize the economies of running those routes, we look for schools with small ridership and then join them together so that they're actually, two schools will ride the same bus. And we've never done that before because of disciplinary issues. But so we were able to eliminate 9 routes with that. So we're getting creative in our problem solving. So the board knows I'm kind of a data geek, so I'm always showing graphs. But we started out the year with an average of 17 a week of daily uncovered routes. That was a major challenge for us. And now, because of all these changes and improvements that we made, we're down to at least 1 a week, and maybe the last couple we've had not any uncovered. So we're making good progress, and we're continuing to monitor the data. So the last slide was about the weather plans. Unfortunately, the weather happened before we were able to actually do the new routes adjustment. Thankfully, it was a closing, and we didn't have to deal with that. But last year, what we heard, a lot of parent complaints from, were that students that were on hard-to-reach roads, the buses couldn't get up there, so their kids were getting left behind. And so what we went and analyzed, there were 79 stops that are on those hard-to-reach roads, very hilly, difficult road conditions. And so what we're going to do is create a winter route system that starts in beginning of December and runs through March. So those students will maybe have to walk a little tiny bit further to get to a route, but they'll get picked up and be brought to school. And so that will impact 350 students who might otherwise have not been able to get a ride and have to rely on their parents to drive them or to stay home. But we will not be changing the door-to-door service. So those smaller buses can get on those roads a little bit easier. That would impact those 60 students.
Mr. Nelms?
Jim, for those that don't know, can you kind of reiterate on the distance required to be eligible for bus transportation?
Yeah, for elementary, it's a mile and a quarter.
Yes.
A mile and a quarter for the high schoolers.
Okay.
But there's a requirement for under a half-mile walk distance.
That's
correct?
correct.
To the bus stop.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Just, I'm not a meteorologist, but every indication would seem to be that we're in for a very rough winter. So one point of just really obvious communication between the city and the district is if there are, because look, 350 students, it's a small percentage of the overall population of the district, but that's a lot of students. So if there's ever a situation where a given road isn't getting salted or isn't getting plowed, and we can make sure that our city administration and the public services department understands that they need extra attention. I mean, the last thing we want is to have done this in a way that's keeping students from making it to school. So as those situations come up, if there's ever not the appropriate communication, please, let me know or let the city know, because that's a big deal and it's an obvious point for collaboration between our two entities.
Yes, so I failed to introduce our Director of Transportation, John Davis, is still relatively new with us. This is his second year. And he does have a great relationship with the maintenance department, and so whenever we ask for particular attention on a given road, like Jonathan, for example, is a really difficult road, they're always been very responsive. So.
And we also have Mr. Davis, welcome aboard. We also have a new Director of Public Services, which obviously oversees those operations. Gerald Checo is a longtime and very well thought of number 2 person in the Parks Department. So he's now there. So I presume the two of you will always have good communications, but if there's ever anything we can help with, let us know.
And I think for our audience as well, when we're talking in terms of Yellow Bus and First Student is, I believe, the largest international carrier around, and we're happy that this is their headquarters. And if somebody like First Student is having that kind of problem, we can only imagine what it is for other folks, particularly within this state. And the other piece is some people may not know that our high school students are on Metro. And the Metro system is different than the Yellow Bus, and so we have the 2-hour delay maybe for Yellow Bus, but not necessarily for Metro. So it begins to be somewhat confusing. But as I understand it, we are the #1 customer for the Metro system as well. So it's transporting kids is a big deal. And now we have this. I would assume the employment, as much as this was sort of a crisis this fall for various and sundry reasons, I would think that it's probably going to be somewhat perpetual, this flow of needing employees on a more regular basis, and maybe we could work on that.
Well, that was the one other thing I was going to say, and I don't want to duplicate or replicate anything, but the city just committed several million additional dollars to workforce development programs specifically meant to place people in certain jobs. So things like the SOAR program through the Urban League, Cincinnati Works, the Free Store Food Bank's Cooks program. I don't know, so we haven't
Can
funded
we
a
add
program
this?
that specifically says we're going to churn out drivers or take folks that are underemployed and would like, to work part-time but at a medium wage rather than a low wage. So if there's something that we can do, I don't know whether it's an existing program like through an Urban League or with Cincinnati State, but to make sure the pipeline is churning out to meet the need.
That'd be
Has much
great.
happened in that regard, or if not, we can set things in motion.
Obviously, we need to do more and do it together.
Okay.
And I think that's why the suggestion was to come to your meeting today and start that collaborative conversation. But Joe has been doing some partnering with some other vendors like UPS and working through Parents for Public Schools, right?
Yeah, in Urban League as well. Excuse me, Rocky and I communicate, and he does feed me some candidates from time to time. And so we're trying creative things. As she mentioned UPS, I worked there before and had some contacts there. It's another part-time job. So we're trying to find people in the community where, two part-time schedules might work together and kind of help both companies out. So we're trying some various things like that as well.
Great.
That's it.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
presentation.
So can I just ask what the next
Please
steps
do.
would be to
Go for it.
to your point, because that sounds like an obvious way to kind of connect these. Is that you and Jensine will communicate with each other?
Yeah, that sounds great. I don't pretend to know who all of the stakeholders are, but it's one small example. There's a growing need for translators around healthcare. So, we've been working with Cincinnati State, and they're getting ready to announce a program toward that end. So, I don't know whether it's First Student and private carriers like other private carriers, FedEx, getting around the same table and saying, okay, where's the need? And maybe it's not Cincinnati State. I don't know who the provider for the accreditation is, but getting those folks together for a meeting and saying
Let's do it.
there are people that want jobs and they're
Yeah.
So we're happy to take the lead on that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Perfect. Our next presentation, in part, grew out of members of the school district administrative team and board team visiting with the school system of Kenton County and found out best practices regionally seem to be happening on the other side of the river. And Jenny Frazier was kind enough to bring that to our attention. And so I don't know, Jenny, if you want to at least introduce everybody you've got, that would be great.
Okay.
And we think this has great efforts for us and benefits for us, and we think it would be beneficial for the city as well. And I don't know, you have some business to do today. You want to do it after the presentation or before?
We can do it after.
Okay, great.
It'll take 1 second.
I just want to congratulate the city of Cincinnati and Cincinnati Public Schools for leading the nation around environmental sustainability.
All right.
Cincinnati actually is the 3rd largest district in the country for leading schools. So we're very excited about that. And the city, Larry Falcon is here and Sue Magnus, and we think that we're doing some really great things. And Kenton County School District has also been leading the country. They're the national EPA partner for Energy Star. And so we're really pleased to have Chris Baker, who is the energy manager for Kenton County Schools. We also have, she'll speak first, and then Mike Burson, formerly of CPS, who led the GREAT program, the LEAD program, and now is on Ally's board of directors.
You got a good man.
We're very excited.
We miss him.
Yeah.
We tried for a long time to get him on our board, and we finally did after he retired. So it's great to have him here. And we also have Steve Schumacher with Ally. He is our Green STEM officer, and he's a workforce development director.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Baker. I'm with the Kenton County School District. Wanted to talk a little bit about our energy program and what we're doing and try to focus mostly on what we're doing with energy monitoring and energy education within our schools. Our energy program is a three-pronged program. We do school construction, high-performance school buildings. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because I know Cincinnati Public is definitely on that bandwagon. But we also do a lot of energy monitoring and energy education. Our EWISE program started in 2007. That is a student energy team program. It started in all of our schools. We have 18 schools. And it's an after-school program to where students join this energy team. And the program is based around assessing their buildings, educating the building staff and occupants about energy consumption, raising awareness about the need to reduce energy consumption and conserve, and then to monitor the building and what's going on with the energy consumption.
And these are students.
Students, all the way from elementary school through high school.
Which speaks to the issue. I know the city is interested in building a green workforce, and here these kids are getting exposed to this right away, which is great.
And what we're finding is, especially at the elementary level, it's a very large female population in these teams. They don't realize they're doing STEM type of education. They think they're saving the world. So that's something that pretty
That's
much
women.
surprised us.
So why you think that representation is disproportionate as it relates to gender and female involvement versus male?
I think, again, they don't see it as an engineering or a STEM type program,
Okay.
which typically draws in the male population.
Okay.
They see it more as environmental and helping and,
Okay.
that type of thing.
Okay.
In 2009, we started as part of our construction program, a Construction 101 class. This is another after-school activity. It happens at whatever site we are currently doing construction on. It started at the Turkey Foot Middle School because the students were in the existing school watching the new school being built. It's a volunteer, kids sign up for it. And then what we do is we match them with all of the building construction professionals. The architects meet with them, the engineers, the mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, structural engineers. At this site, they actually got to do a geotechnical test bore and see the layers of the earth and actually found glacial silt, which is pretty uncommon on our side of the river. So we partner them with these different consultants, teach them about commissioning, the different types of jobs that are available in the construction industry that aren't necessarily the pipe fitters and the HVAC mechanics, but some of the more high technical jobs that are out there that they may not be aware of. They also do hard hack tours. They pretty much every time they meet, they take a tour of the building while it's under construction. It's after the construction day has ended. And they actually become the safety trainers. They give the safety trainings if they're doing a tour to outside people. They will actually do the safety talk to these adults on proper etiquette on a job site. At the end of the year, we usually we take them to the University of Louisville's Engineering Expo, which is a hands-on expo for students targeted at their age. They do a phenomenal job, and these really tend to get a lot of these students excited about engineering. In fact, out of the original Construction 101 program, we have 3 students, I think, that are now at the University of Louisville Speed School. The next program we've started is, it's actually a class in Turkey Foot Middle School. Since we started on building high-performance buildings, we have, on the facility side, really been trying to find a way to use the buildings as a teaching tool in the classroom, and we were finally able to crack that with finding the right teacher. At Turkey Foot Middle School, they have a class it's an encore class called Energy and Environment, so 6th grade students rotate through it. And it is a STEM type program, and they learn about and do experiments on all of the high performance features of the buildings. For instance, they do experiments on solar, they do experiments on the daylighting, they do water quality testing on the green roof, things about geothermal. So they're learning all of the high performance features of their building and then doing experiments based on it. And what we found is the students actually know more about their building than the teachers do.
Believe it.
And then also in 2011, we started with New Energy Technologies and their Energy Center. This is a online program that we use. It's a partnership. And, well, to date, in the first 3 years, we've avoided costs of over $600,000. But the great piece of this is we also use it in the education. So this program allows us to do real-time monitoring on our building profile loads for electricity. So they can get on, today you can get on and see what the building profile was yesterday. They can get in and see all of the energy reports from our baseline back to 2005 for their building. So all of our head custodians have access to this, and all of our energy teams have access to this. And the energy teams actually get in there, they monitor for when we do shutdowns. We have Thanksgiving coming up. There's checklists on there that they work with the head custodians, making sure we get everything shut down. When they come back, they're able to access the interval data and see their building profile load and make sure everything actually did shut down. They print these out, they post them on a public bulletin board in the school, and it's part of that monitoring and awareness program within our school district.
So, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So can you, so what's driving the cost savings there? Is it, electricity being not in use when it
It's
otherwise would be?
behavior. It's how, we're changing the way people use electricity in the buildings. It's a behavior change.
And that comes from the monitoring? or
That comes from the monitoring.
That's a
It
culture
comes from
change?
Our head custodians, no one knows the building better than your head custodian. That head custodian can get on here and say, oh, for some reason, it's not where it should be. We should be seeing, what we show on this is you should see the nice flat over the weekends and at night. That's what we target with the behavior modification. So they're looking to see, if they pull this up and they see large spikes at night, they know something's not shutting off like it's supposed to be. So the students monitor this, the head custodians monitor this. If they find an anomaly, then they contact me, and then we do further investigation. In fact, over one instance I have is we just did a controls upgrade on some boilers and chiller renovations. Well, the day after they did that upgrade, the chart was going off. I mean, everything was running at night and they had all these spikes. And so within a couple of days, we were able to find that, fix that issue, get it back to normal. We lost about $200 over 3 days. To where if you don't have this type of a program, you're lucky if you're going to catch it when you get your bill 3 months later.
And so this kind of program exists in each of the buildings, and each building is independent of the other, has its own monitoring system.
They're all tied in together,
The same.
depending on what your password is, depends on what building you get to see.
Okay?
But each building has multiple meters, right?
Some do,
Okay.
some
So
do.
my question is, so you're saying that the different schools don't get to see the data from other schools? So what I have found, and I spent the summer learning about how we can change behavior, and what I was taught is the best way to change behavior is to prove to someone that people like them are doing it better or more efficient. And so if the one school saw, well, this other school is more efficient than me, then all of a sudden they want to compete and they want to be just as efficient. So it seems to me like it would be a great idea to actually have, the charts of every school to see, who's at the bottom and who's the top.
Actually, it is.
Okay.
They do provide us a weekly report.
Okay.
In that weekly report, they summarize the losses and gains by school with a total, and then the weekly graph for each one of those schools, for each school. That goes out to every head custodian.
Okay.
And their supervisor every week. And it goes to the student teams every week.
So if there was a way to reward people, that even gets to better change behavior to people who either, significantly change the fastest or the most, or people that consistently, are doing the best in terms of efficiency.
Our head custodians, or all of our custodians, are no longer supervised by school principals. They're now supervised by the facilities department, so they are our employees. So they are actually, that's part of their evaluation process,
Okay.
is the energy management of their building. And then we also, this program also puts all of our information into the portfolio manager with Energy Star. So every school does have an Energy Star rating, and they can also get on that. They print those out. They're trying to hit that 75 mark to become an Energy Star certified school, which we have 12 out of the 18 now that are certified.
Mr. Nelms?
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask, are some of these skills transferable? The kids only spend a certain amount of time in school, and the skills that they learn, I know, can be transferred to home and other parts of the community. Is that encouraged?
Absolutely. Again, awareness is part of the
Okay.
Energy Team program. For instance, in February, we have a district-wide family energy night. Every team holds an energy fair at their school, invites the community, and then shows different types of energy-efficient opportunities, how they can lower consumption in their homes, and a lot of the different tools that Duke Energy offers to homeowners.
Thank you.
And then what this culminates into is we started our Kenton County Academies of Innovation and Technology in 2011. It's an academy-based high school. Students spend half of the day there, and then the other half of the day at their home high school, where they take their core content classes. These students, as part of this is a project-based learning, they don't have a standard report card. They're based on presentation, critical thinking skills, that type of thing, and they do year-long projects. One of the academies is the Sustainable Energy Technology Engineering Academy. Now, these students also have access to our Energy Center. They monitor their home, they have access to every school. So a lot of their projects, their year-long projects, for instance, last year, 2 years ago, we had a set of students redesign the lighting in their building and come up with the cost analysis. With a lot of help from the Greater Cincinnati Energy Alliance.
I like that.
Last year, I had a student design energy-efficient landscaping at one of the elementary schools. Now, they're able to get on the Energy Center and pull all of the energy data from those schools, the real data, to help them with their calculations in these projects. These students they start as sophomores and juniors, and then as a senior, they have the ability to either do an internship program or to do dual credit through the academy. And this is our first year with seniors. We have a senior, Alex Marquette, who actually did the lighting project 2 years ago. He is now an intern for New Energy Technologies. One of their largest customers is JCPenney's, and they use the same software in their stores. He works at the Florence store as his regular part-time job, and he now has an unpaid internship with New Energy Technologies, and he is the energy captain for that store. So over the summer, he did training with the Net Mentor. He evaluated his store's performance. In August, he created the building plan, the energy plan for that store, and created the relationships with the staff and the management there. In September, he launched the building energy plan with the store manager. These months, of course, JCPenney is not as worried about energy in the Christmas sales months. So this is when he's really going to be doing a lot of digging into, and again, it's behavior. What is happening when nobody's in that store? How are they turning it on in the morning? How are they shutting it down? How can they do it to save energy? And then starting in January, he will expand to work with more stores in this area. Most of his work is not done on site. He has an office at the academy, so most of it is over the web, over the phone, and pretty exciting.
You gotta pay that guy.
I know. I'm ready to hire him right now.
This is the interval data chart from that store. He met with the store manager on this day to present the plan and was able to show immediate reductions in store energy consumption when the store is closed. I saw him about 3 days after that meeting, and first thing he did, you have to see this, and pulls out his laptop and is showing me, look, what one day, one meeting, and we're already reducing consumption in the store.
Great. Thank you. And we have more?
We do.
Go for it.
Mike?
Good morning. It's
Morning.
hard, it's hard to follow Chris. Because actually, we took interest in her work and what Kenton County was doing back when we really started into green schools here at Cincinnati Public Schools. And And I just want to add, in addition to the students being able to compare.
Might want, Mike, make sure your mic is
Okay.
ready, Mike.
In addition to students being able to compare their school to another, they're also able to compare my classroom to your classroom, which is, again,
Wow.
it breeds that competition and the excitement within the students. But it is great to be back at Cincinnati Public Schools talking about green schools. Because being green is about being responsible with our natural resources, and that's what we need to teach our students. It's about creating efficient and healthy environments. And if we could only pick one building type to be green, I say let's make it schools, because they become working laboratories for the children, such as the student that Chris described, to be green entrepreneurs. Preserving natural resources should always be on our agenda, and not just when gas prices go up. So again, getting our children to understand this means that they're going to bring us adults along, and that we don't just, every 20 years we go from one phase to the next. It's really about institutionalizing this concern about saving the resources. And that's the emphasis of the Eco-Mentoring program that's sponsored by Ally. I did interact with Ally early in the facilities master plan before Cincinnati Public Schools and the Ohio School Facilities Commission added LEED certification to the program. And of course, Ally was very instrumental in helping us, Pleasant Ridge School, become LEED certified, and that sort of was a watershed for us. So in 2009, when Ally asked if I would train some eco-mentors about the solar panel array that was donated to Pleasant Ridge by Duke, I was glad to be able to help. I had a group of about 5 students, maybe they were in the 5th grade, 5th, 6th grade, and they made up the solar panel team, and I was supposed to explain to them how the whole system worked, so that at the time we had our workshop, they would be able to explain it to the visitors that came. So we talked about how solar panels worked, and the amount of power that they generated, and how you can find that information on the software that was also donated to the school. And in my group, there was, as always, there was one young man who seemed to be more interested in horsing around than talking about solar panels. But on the day of the workshop, I was a little late getting there, and when I got to the station, there was this young man explaining the photovoltaic array to Lieutenant Governor Lee Fisher. So he gave an excellent explanation. So the moral of the story is that young people can be inspired by new technology when they know it will help save resources and provide a safer environment in the classroom and improve our lives. In fact, 2 of the students that participated in that project commented at the end of the session, my favorite part was when we got to tell others about ways to help our planet, and we know how to change the world. Green technology can kindle new career goals and tap the growing spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship that inspires our children. I think that, I'm going off script a little bit, but there are a lot of new careers being created every day. There are thousands of companies who would like to have someone like Chris on staff or her student who can help them figure out how they can operate their buildings more efficiently. You walk into a grocery store today and you notice that the lights in the freezer are not on until you approach it. So everybody has this tremendous amount of sophistication, and it requires somebody to really take care of that. So these are the opportunities for our youth. So again, the importance of having green schools is that they serve as working laboratories. And so that's all that I have to contribute to.
Thank you.
I got a question for Mike before we move on. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nelms?
First of all, Mike, good to see you back, man. And thank you for your expertise. But I would like to, this is for you and Mary. Out of the 55 schools that we have, and we're looking to mimic this concept as a pilot, what schools would you recommend for implementation early as a pilot, you and Mary?
Well, actually, probably some of our renovated school
Okay,
buildings
okay.
might be a little trickier to track the energy than in a brand-new building
Okay.
where we were able to start from scratch. But actually, we have been meeting with several companies who do this because, as you know, with the House Bill 264 and COPS, we have 20 million in bonds that have to be repaid, and they have to be repaid using energy savings. That was why we did it. So we do feel the need for that kind of expertise. And in the companies with whom we've spoken, they've all talked about just what you said, having someone who's your energy manager who changes behavior in addition to the engineers who
Right.
deal with the chillers and the HVA systems
Right,
that aren't
right,
functioning appropriately. So we're looking at that right now, and they've all mentioned the Energy Star software that
Okay.
you have talked about.
Okay.
But I know the software that companies have talked to us about has a cost. Does Energy Star have a cost, a licensing fee?
Energy Star's Portfolio Manager is a free service
Okay.
from
Okay, the
the
portfolio,
EPA.
okay. Okay.
And the EPA also has they can train people for free. We
Okay.
met with the US EPA last week, and they have people that they can bring in to train.
Well, see, I think that would make a wonderful partnership, because if we were to bring in a company to energy manage and they want the behavior change, you would be the partner who could do the behavior change piece while they try to have the engineers that deal with all the technical stuff. So I think that sounds fabulous. So I was listening to every word you said.
You know, I must confess, besides the wonderful story of the students on the career path, I did like the word free. It's one of my favorite four-letter words, so that was particularly attractive. But I mean, this is just remarkable. I wanted to know how the city monitors their energy use building by building, or
We'd like to invite the Director of Environment and Sustainability, Larry Falcon, to the mic.
My cat.
I did want to, if I could, while Larry's coming in. Mr. Nelms, actually, the last 23 projects were LEED certified, which means that there was a modeling software that the engineers used to design those buildings that would predict what their energy consumption could be.
Okay.
So if you're able then to take the energy management information and compare it
Okay.
to that modeling information, that tells you how well those buildings are performing. And I think it's just a matter of tying all those things together, and
Okay.
Exactly.
that would make it happen.
welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of
afternoon.
council, members of the board. Thanks for the opportunity to talk today. Many of you know that the city of Cincinnati started getting serious about sustainability efforts actually now about 7 years ago. In 2008 was when we first adopted our Green Cincinnati plan. I think you all have copies of this one-pager at your desk. And the Green Cincinnati plan was intended to do a number of things simultaneously. We were looking to reduce our carbon emissions as city government and as a broader community, and to improve our local environment. But we wanted to do it in a way that saved more money than it costs, that created jobs, that improved public health, that improved quality of life. And as we got into the projects, we found that achieving multiple objectives simultaneously in that way was not that hard. In fact, most of the things that we would focus on from an environmental perspective naturally had those other benefits. So just as an example of something that we're working on right now, building energy efficiency, it's not that often that city government gets to build a new building, but right now we're building Police District 3, and Police District 3 is being built LEED Platinum net zero energy,
Right.
meaning that the building will have no utility bills. It will generate as much energy on average as it needs. And what we found when we crunched the numbers on that is that it really didn't cost more. It does cost more in initial construction, but it pays you back enough over time so that it really is the better financial investment. Not, you're not paying extra for the green, you're actually saving money with the green. And that has been true when we look at our fleets and our vehicle operations, when we look at our waste reduction efforts and enhanced recycling programs, over and over again, we find that the things that we do are saving money, creating jobs while we're doing green. So that's kind of a long-winded introduction. I think you had a specific question when I came up, so if you'd remind me what that one was.
How we track our energy consumption.
Right. So we have done what's called energy services performance contracts with third-party vendors. When we came in to do capital improvements in our buildings, we had no money to spend up front. You know, our capital budget was more than tapped out. And so we found partners that were willing to come in with their own resources, invest that money in our buildings, achieve performance improvements, achieve utility savings, and get paid back out of those utility savings for the money they invested in our buildings. Part of that contract is what's called a monitoring and verification process, where if they only get paid if they save money, somebody's got to be really sure whether they're saving money or not. And so that monitoring and verification process is something that our vendor does for us in the approximately at this point 80 buildings that we've done the deep energy retrofits on. And we get an annual report from the vendor that documents exactly how much has been saved. Now that's an end of the year thing. On a more day-to-day basis, part of what we did in our buildings was building management systems, building control systems, so that the people in our facilities management division can, you know, from their cell phone, they can check in on what's happening in the building. If they want to, you know, change the mix of fresh air versus recycled air in a building, if they want to, you know, turn lighting down, whatever they need to do from the building, they can do it remotely from their cell phone. So they've got the real-time control of the buildings now.
Thank you. Thanks for that answer.
And I'll wrap up. I'll be very brief. And this sector is expanding rapidly. The Department of Labor predicts that 200 to 400% expansion across the U.S. over the next 5-6 years. So as Mike indicated and Chris has talked about, there are jobs in new fields that are opening up. And I want to point one statistic on this first slide, a 25% return on investment for these kinds of projects. That's what companies are finding across the U.S. So our municipalities, our school systems, our hospitals, our universities can follow up with similar kinds of return on investment. There are new tools and new applications coming out all the time. We met with HP Energy, it's in Middletown. They have very strong connections to Silicon Valley, and really the IT applications for energy and resource management are just improving just every month. We see schools as centers for workforce development and economic development in this sector, both as a laboratory. Mike mentioned that word. We think that all schools, particularly because of their educational mission, are a laboratory for energy management, energy efficiency kinds of programs. And so we suggest a series of green coaches in every school, working with student groups similar to what Kenton County has established, that has access to everyday energy monitoring, that knows exactly what their buildings are doing and not doing, for them to start learning this whole part of STEM. And then finally, we're going to suggest that in terms of resilience and reliability, municipalities need to think about encouraging their neighborhoods to start microgrid projects and solar garden projects, to start thinking about generating energy at the place that it's used, so that we're not prone to electricity, breakage of service, and so we move towards net zero districts. Many cities are moving in that direction as we speak, and municipalities really are taking the lead in the United States in terms of sustainability. And then finally, in terms of school initiatives, we would suggest an industry credential be available to every high school student in energy management or energy efficiency, that apprenticeships and internships be supported, that a green scholarship program be set up for resources for students who don't have access to funds to get training in these areas. And that schools, these energy teams can work in community centers, other buildings to manage and monitor energy use as projects. So we think that in total, what Chris and what Mike and I have talked about, a real opportunity for a whole section of new jobs and new training for students in this area. Cincinnati and Cincinnati Public Schools have been a leader in this area, and this is really just another way to expand on that good work. Thank you.
That's great.
Madam Chair, can you say a word about what the first bullet there, what that would look like?
It's a requirement by 2018 that there are industry credentials available to high school students in a whole series of different fields. And we would have to look into, we'd probably work with Cincinnati State about what that credential would be, because there is this joint credit program between Cincinnati Public and Cincinnati State.
It's the superintendent can speak to this better than anybody, especially me, but just with these incoming freshmen, there's additional kinds of requirements, and one of these is this career path piece, so maybe you could talk to
Exactly,
that.
and we do have a dual enrollment program with Cincinnati State, so it's wonderful if we could create a dual enrollment green path for green jobs. That would truly be wonderful with Cincinnati State. Right now, it's basically been a lot of your English and mathematics dual credit, so when the youngsters arrive at Cincinnati State, they have the core academics and then are able to get whatever particular credential they need. But certainly, I would love if Cincinnati State would allow us to offer some of those courses. Right now, the state of Ohio, I think every superintendent in the state would like some additional pathways, because our career tech funding comes from the state of Ohio. So we only get funding for the particular programs that they fund at the state level. So we would love you to come to Columbus to do some lobbying for us so that we could have some more career technical pathways opened in the state of Ohio that are just more up to date for the jobs of the future.
Madam Chair, so
Yes.
Just because I think when we're ever talking about this conversation, it's also important to note that in 2012, Cincinnati became the largest U.S. city to have 100% of its electricity backed by renewable sources. And when that was up for, in 2014, this past spring for renewal, we had to fight to continue it, but we did, and council said this is a priority. And so not only do we have that, but we've made significant investments in public transportation beyond the streetcar, but that's important, but also on our bike share program, expanded metro program. So, I think the city is really becoming a leader on sustainability and public transportation, and in a way that we don't always get credit for. So I think I just want to make those two extra points in addition to the other stuff you've talked about today. So thank you.
Ms. Hoffman,
Yeah, and I would just say
thank you.
to build off of that, then that, it seems like then the natural connection is then it's our responsibility to make sure that we're training kids who will graduate ready to take on the jobs that the city is prioritizing. And so, yes, any linkages that we could have between the state allowing funding for that just seems like it's a natural connection. And with the red bikes, we should also mention that last night we had students from New Taipei City from the exchange program here. And when President Bolton asked what their favorite thing was since they'd been here, one of the girls said the red bikes.
Wow.
Yeah. So internationally, it has struck a chord with folks.
That's awesome.
Super, super.
Madam Chair, we
Yes.
might, we were so inspired by both the talent of the folks that are leading these sustainability efforts that we're going to actually pass a couple items on the city side if
Please
we can.
do.
It seems like the opportune moment to do it. And Ms. Calloway from the clerk's office, let me know if there's anything I need to do other than just put them on, and Chris and I can vote on them, which will actually be enough to pass them out. But just to say what these are, the first one, LEAD as a program is certainly the most well-known, but it's not the only program of that kind. In fact, some actually sort of nudge for higher levels of sustainability in buildings, and the city does have an abatement program, and this would direct the administration to open that abatement program up to other programs besides LEED. So one of them is the Living Building Challenge, which aims for even higher standards. So that's the first one. And then the second one directs the city administration to come up with a plan to expand access to electric car chargers. This is certainly two goals. One, we obviously want people to have transportation options, whether that's red bike, streetcar, traditional automobile, but within automobile, increasing, not decreasing sector of the market is going to go for electric cars. And if we can also make sure that the energy source backing those electric cars is clean too, then we'll really be humming. So this directs the city administration to deal with costs, site selection, things like that, to expand chargers. And working with our friends at CPS, you all can let us know where you might want a charger to go. So, Ms. Calloway, should we put these on for passage? You want us to vote? All right. With no objection from Councilman Seelbach, we'll just put those on for passage. Great, thanks.
Thank you.
When
Ms.
we
Kaufman.
we recently took a trip to Indianapolis for the day to see some of the stuff that they were doing in terms of education. When we pulled into the visitor spots at the mayor's building, every visitor spot had a car charger in it.
Yeah. And one other piece on that, actually, Ms. Kamine from my office, she and I had a phone call last week with someone who is in the electric bus market. So I imagine the day might come before too long, and maybe Student First is already on top of this, but where we'll be plugging in our school buses too, because that's the way the whole world's going.
And also, there's an argument to be made that 10 years from now, you've talked about this,
Right.
we won't even need bus drivers because cars will actually drive themselves. And
I do think the self-driven car is very close.
Very close,
It
yeah.
sounds a little science fiction-y, but I think that,
You're right.
I bet a consumer prototype will be ready in as soon as 5 years. It's just a matter of whether the infrastructure and legal parameters are ready to keep up with that. So, but that can be for another ACES meeting.
I would ask about the electric buses too. I know that that's part of the fleet design for both First Student and also Metro. And I think at our first transportation advisory meeting, we had a demonstration and it was pretty impressive. And we also have the change of fuel and what have you. So you guys are on the cutting edge and we appreciate it.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I set up this next?
Go
piece?
for it.
Two final pieces. I'll be able to do my concluding piece very briefly, but we have the city's Director of Planning, Director Charles Graves is here, if you want to come up here. And we're really excited about this piece, and this is with direction from our friends on the school side. I'm actually baking this notion of community learning centers into the city code. So the Director will be able to explain what's happened and take any questions.
Well, thank you. Board members and council members, thank you for having me. I want to give you an update in terms of where we are with our zoning code. So this is a little bit different than the school's issues, but it does tie very closely. And in terms of giving you some background, we've been working on a plan for Cincinnati for a while. And there are a couple of recommendations in terms of sustainability and collaboration, which is what we're doing, and that's part of Plan Cincinnati. We were fortunate to get a grant from HUD to work on our zoning code, and we've been doing that. It is a process that takes time, and whenever I'm asked how long is it going to take, my response is, it'll take as long as it takes.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not going to rush this. We're talking about zoning for neighborhoods, residential, commercial, industrial, schools. And we're also talking about the next generation. How are we going to live in our city? What are the requirements? What are the opportunities for communities to be involved, for the schools to be involved, for everybody to be involved in this process, developers, and everybody has a different opinion. So we're taking our time on this, and we have gone through our first draft, and we had a lot of comments. We had over 650 comments about our first draft, whether it's the height of buildings, whether it's setbacks, or whatever And then we're looking at definitions, which we'll get to in terms of schools and community learning centers. But we've had a lot of comments, we've had a lot of input. So we took all of that input, and we're now in our second draft. And we're getting comments on the second draft. And we'll probably have a third draft. We will have a third draft in January. And we're gonna get as close to right as we can. So, again, we revised our second draft. There's some big issues such as parking and signage. We're still working on that. Third draft in mid-2015. We're looking at definitions for public or private schools, community learning centers for the second draft. And we'd love to have the input from the board and from the school side, because we want to get it right, and we want to get your input. And we want to have you all say, this is close to what we think a definition of schools and community learning centers are. For the public, anybody can download our draft, www.cincinnati-oh.gov/zoning, or you can just go to the website and see it, or the Planning and Buildings website. So let me get into some of the definitions of what we've come up with the input of others. Public or private schools means a facility for educational purposes that offers a general course of study at a primary, middle, or high school level, and vocational and trade programs that are incidental to the operation of such schools. That's a lot to digest, but we're going to give you the definitions and let you all think about it. And if there's some wordsmith that needs to happen, that's fine. So a community learning center, and Councilmember PG sent me out to Euler, and there's a community learning center, and I learned, because this is a new kind of educational facility, and we're going to have more of these. Hopefully we'll have more of these community learning centers. So, you know, we have after-school programs, we have after-school facilities, and we have small ones, we have large ones, we have daycare facilities. So we're trying to figure out definitions and how they can work in a community, in probably a residential area, and that the neighbors know what's going on, that there's parking available, that it is a complement to the community. And what I learned at Euler is that it is a complement to the community. And so our definition is a community learning center means a community campus designed to provide integrated educational, recreational, health, and civic services to the population of the community in which the campus is located. It's pretty broad, but I think that it describes what I saw and what the teachers and what the community says in terms of what a community learning center is. So that's the definition. So now we're working on regulations. How do you regulate that? So we're still working on that. We're still working on that. I will send you those regulations, because I think it needs some more work. I think it needs some more clarity. And I think that if we want to share this with the general public, we need to make it in plain English.
Thank you very much, Director. And obviously, I mean, the notion of what community learning centers are, where it's not just a school, you have a health clinic, a dental clinic, an eye factory. I mean, there could be, I know people have talked about commercial enterprises inside early learning centers. But the one thing, and I realize folks have the document that Director Graves was working off of, but this is certainly an ongoing conversation, and you all are the most important group of folks to offer input. But if there are any questions or things you want to offer to Director Graves now.
Yeah, have you, in your research, and I know you said there's no timeline, thanks for the presentation.
Sure.
I see community learning centers, especially in the frame that you mentioned as being a holistic, one-stop service for the community as well as family. Well, have you noticed, is there anything similar to this anywhere in the country, within the community, any school districts, school system?
Yes, there are
It is?
those, but we're still doing our research in
Okay.
terms of defining that and regulating those. So before I conclude, I just want to mention two other things. And I want to call out Mike Burson, because when you all are renovating buildings, improving buildings, we want to make sure that our permitting process is moving quickly. And particularly LEED buildings, we want to make sure that there's an additional level in terms of moving things even quicker as an incentive. So that's part of our, what we call the land development code. It's part of our zoning
Okay.
code. So we're going to be talking about fast tracking permits, particularly for educational and LEED buildings. And then the last piece is technical pathways. And I was just hearing the conversation. And we have 3 or 4 openings for plans examiners, building inspectors, things of that nature. And we're having a little bit of a problem, particularly finding people within our jurisdiction. So, in terms of the focus, in terms of pathways, there is a pathway for employment with the city, building inspectors, plans examiners. We even have elevator inspectors. You know, I mean, there's a course to go through, and there are some openings and opportunities, but we want to make sure that people are prepared. We'd love to have interns come and just observe. You may not have any money, but the experience and the opportunity, and to put that on your resume, I think can go a long way. So that concludes my presentation.
I have just 2 questions, or maybe just one question. What's the timeline for our board members maybe to have a discussion about this and get some recommendations or some thoughts back to you? What would be the timeline that we should be looking at if we do have some suggestions? Because I'm sure administration might, and I'm sure the board might.
As I said in the beginning, however much time it takes.
Okay.
So if you
Never
need-
tell us
I know.
that.
Well, you know, not 5 years.
Director, how about a slightly more specific?
Okay,
For
so by
feedback
the,
from the board.
by the end of the year, we'd like to
Okay,
have something.
that's helpful.
We can do that.
And then we'll talk about that some more, and we'll have some more time, and we can come back and talk about those definitions and get more specific, so everybody is comfortable.
Great. Well, we'll take it to the board.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I ask a follow-up question there too?
Sure.
So I think one of the wonderful things about our community learning centers is the community part of it, right? They respond to the needs of a community. So what you saw at Euler might look very different than what we have at Riverview East, or what, you know, Roselawn is just starting to build their community learning center now, like what they're, you know, looking for. And so, and to say that, period, and then say, they also respond not just now, but 3 years from now, if something shifts in a community and what they need at Euler is different, that community learning center will shift with it. So I think the challenge in figuring out regulations and definitions, and would love just some advice from you, is how to be broad enough that it's not restrictive to responding to the community's need while being specific enough that there are actually definitions around this. So any thoughts there, or if that's, we do the best we can and then we start applying for variances when those come up. So just curious what your advice would be.
So
Right.
the
V word.
definition that we have, I think, is pretty broad. I think you need to focus in on those regulations, and give us some advice and thoughts. And we're gonna look at other jurisdictions to see how that works. So, my advice is just really take a look at what we put together so far. Because I think we're learning from everybody. We're not the experts on everything, even though we're planners. So that's why we're saying, we're gonna take our time. We're going to get as much input. We really need the community's input as well as the school's input, because there could be some differences of how they should be regulated. And so we're gonna work out something, and I appreciate the fact that there are different kinds of learning centers. What we're really trying to do with the zoning code is to look forward, because there's not a whole lot of opportunities to do a whole new zoning code. We haven't done one in 10 years, and then before that it was 20 years. So we want to do this for the next generation. And technology is changing. I hear, people aren't going to be driving cars anymore.
I'm going to be driving my car.
How do people learn? And so, we're really trying to do as much as we can to plan for the next generation, which is what you all do.
That's good context for us to have, though, not just thinking
Yes.
about our communities that are definition today, but what
Tomorrow.
we might
In the
want it to
future.
be in the future.
Great. Thank you very much, Director. Can't help but notice that Board Member Hoffman sounds like she knows a good land use real estate.
Yeah, wonder how that
About the
happens.
zoning code.
Right. So this final piece for me is basically a public service announcement, essentially, to our friends on the school system side. And maybe you already know about this, but maybe
Superintendent Mike.
you don't. So we've launched this CAP program, College Affordability Assistance Program, and it is, to be clear, an informational and enrollment program. The forgiveness piece is not coming from the city. This is the federal government. But basically what it is, going back to 2007, there was congressional action for folks that go into public service jobs, which is government, but also not-for-profit. So this cuts a very sort of broad swath of different career paths. For folks who've done that, they can qualify for income-based college student debt loan repayment program, and then whatever, after 10 years, if they make these regular payments, they can then have the balance forgiven. And the savings can be substantial. And for what it's worth, anyone that works for CPS, anyone that works for any not-for-profit, this is teachers, this is every person that's part of the city administration. And, my biggest observation was that this seems like a very worthwhile program that has been very so the awareness has been low. So the other piece that we can do on the city side is sort of, we've talked to our HR department. We have a whole sort of set of materials to sort of be tools about, do I qualify for this? Would this be worthwhile? But also in terms of technical assistance about actually getting enrolled, starting your things. Consider us here as a resource to help with that. So if you take there's a piece of paper on your desk that if you actually fold it in half becomes a brochure, but we have a lot more materials where those come from, and again, technical assistance if we can be helpful with that. And so we're also just, on the city side, if we can file the presentations for the record today. Thank you, Ms. Calloway.
Thank you for that last presentation. I know that CPS has some semblance of a program similar to this.
We are working with a private contractor who is working through with our staff, but I would love also to be able to give them the resource in the city HR department.
That would be great. That would be great. We know we're at the hour that we're going to conclude, but the chair will take this personal privilege on behalf of the board and the superintendent. There's a great crowd here today, but the most important person, our VIP, is Mr. Brewster Rhodes, who who is seldom called out, but he was gracious enough to serve as our treasurer for our renewal campaign, and is always here making Cincinnati and Greater Cincinnati a better place, and is one of the major folks responsible for the life and breadth and great future that CPS has. So, Mr. Rhodes, Brew, thank you for being here.
Someone needs to take that camera out of his hands and take a picture of him. Right?
That would have been great when the first look, it's like he's ready to take a picture and it's on you, buddy. Thank you all. I guess we're adjourned. Oh,